Hello and welcome to the E-Talking podcast, rated by FeedSpot as one of the top 20 podcasts about electric vehicles on the web. My name's Stuart Garlick, I'm from eMotion, that's medium.com/e-motion. In this edition of the podcast, you can hear my discussion with Conrad O'Keefe from eracing.net and Saunders Carmichael Brown, known to most people as Saunders, who is a presenter and digital producer who was known as an independent travel vlogger before joining the Formula E broadcast team in Season 4. For the past 1.5 seasons, he's been travelling with the Formula E Circus, doing interviews at the track and chronicling what it's like to be in each of the host cities. We'll be talking to him about what that was like and also his hopes for the new season. Welcome to the Talking Podcast. I'm here with Conrad O'Keefe and the man who, like Robinho, Ronaldinho and Antonio Felix da Costa, likes to be known by only one name, Saunders Carmichael Brown. Hello there. So this is your first time on the podcast, Saunders. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
I guess you're best known now for being part of the Formula E broadcasting behemoth, but that wasn't what you started off doing, was it? So you've been a travel YouTuber and producer for many years, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of an interesting journey, actually. So I kind of started off in the digital world, very much behind the camera, sort of helping produce and direct content. Started off with football, and then it sort of slowly evolved itself through having to travel a lot with that job into me creating my own content around the travelling I was doing for work, and it sort of picked up and people seemed to wanting to see more from the travel side of things. So I eventually was very fortunate to be in a position where I was able to make it a full-time job and just make content for myself and for brands around the travel and lifestyle sphere, but then also still keeping the digital producing side going in the background, mainly because I just enjoyed it too much to not do it. And then that led me into the path of Formula E and one of the agencies that they tasked to do their digital content.
Right, because a lot of the people who came to Formula E through YouTube obviously came as influencers, but I think you would say that you're not an influencer. You're more like a traditional broadcaster in many ways, aren't you?
I think because I came to it from the behind the camera to begin with, and then sort of it developed into almost without having a choice, just being the presenter of it, so to speak. I've always kind of aligned myself with the values and the style of traditional broadcasting, or what you would imagine from like the production point of view, as opposed to just being an out and out host, or so to speak. So yeah, I think I could agree with that.
If you'd like to support eMotion on Patreon, then you can do, of course. For as little as $1 per month, you can get the chance to nominate topics for discussion in the E-Talking podcast, to nominate articles to be written on eMotion. There will also be exclusive newsletters and articles posted on the Patreon site, which only subscribers can gain access to. So, join us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/E_motionFE. And I think, Conrad, we can both agree that Saunders has the kind of job that we would dream of having in many ways.
Yes, definitely. Definitely so.
So how did you actually, or what was the approach from Formula E? So how did you hear about their interest, and what made you decide, okay, this is the opportunity that I'm taking?
It was a bit of what is very common in the kind of freelance production world. It sort of came from nowhere. So I was doing some freelance editing and digital producing for one of the agencies, the production agency that Formula E get to do a lot of their, or all of their digital content essentially. And they asked me if I could just come and help out with some edits when they were a bit understaffed during the sort of the late stages of season 3. I was already aware of the championship at that point. I'd watched a few of the races. I'm not going to pretend that I was dedicated and watched every single race, because that wasn't the case. In complete honesty, I was aware of it, and I'd sort of keep an eye on how it was going and watch the odd race where I could. And yeah, so I started off just kind of helping out with editing jobs on the championship, be it kind of recaps or highlights of particular moments, or doing like a best circuits of the season sort of YouTube video. And then the guy that was heading up content at the time, at the start of season 4, said, "Look, do you want to get involved with the digital producing side of the social content, so Instagram and Facebook and YouTube? Given your background, I think it could be really, really interesting to us to work together." So he got me involved just before Hong Kong of season 4. And then, I did that job for the entirety of season 4. And I just was thinking, you know what, it would be absolutely amazing if I could combine these two worlds together. This kind of world of being a YouTube host or YouTube kind of talent within the travel sphere. But now I'm really getting into this Formula E and what Formula E stands for. I'd love to be able to combine the two together. So a lot of grafting and a lot of putting my name forward for almost everything I could. Eventually I got the opportunity in testing last year to get in front of the camera, and it's all kind of gone from there.
Right. Conrad, obviously we've both been watching Saunders and the rest of the Formula E presenters, but I mean, do you have any questions on what it's like to broadcast Formula E, or maybe some of his wider interests or anything like that?
Most of the things that I'd probably want to ask sound quite generic. It's more learning how to improve knowing where to look, at what time, strategizing, and also making sure that doesn't detract from your enjoyment of the progression and that you don't feel frustrated. How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, that's a really, really great question, actually. And I think for me, I was very lucky because I was becoming massively interested and passionate about the topic, being Formula E and electric racing. So I think it was actually that passion and enthusiasm that went very much in my favour to allow me to get the opportunity to be in front of the camera, because I think it coincided at the time with them wanting someone who was almost like an extension of a fan. It wasn't someone, they didn't want a polished presenter, they didn't need someone, we've already got amazing talent in that sense with the likes of Nicky Shields, Ben Kay, Jack Nicholls, Dario, etc., etc. So this was an opportunity to have someone who came from maybe the social side, which is somewhere that, as Formula E fans, we all know they target really heavily. So I think my benefit was that I'd been involved in that world, and they were looking for someone from that world, and I was already there doing digital producing. So I wouldn't give myself too much credit to say that it was a lot of what I did that made it happen. I think I was very much in the right place at the right time with the right background.
Yeah.
But in terms of turning that into a way for other people to be able to apply to themselves, I think it's about getting yourself in those situations where, if you are the right person for it, or you could be the right person for it, making people know that you're up for it, and not expecting the conversation to come to you, but making that conversation happen, showing interest, and putting yourself forward for anything that you kind of see fit, without the idea of, you've got to be careful, because you don't want to put yourself forward for something that you're not right for, or you don't think you'd be able to do really well. But again, if you're passionate and you think, you know what, I think I could do this quite well, then having the confidence to back yourself and putting yourself in those conversations is a really great way to start.
Yeah.
Do you think it takes just as much confidence in some ways to admit to yourself that you're not very good at something? I mean, for example, there have been many things that I would really love to be good at, but I just have to admit that without a hell of a lot of work, I'm not. Presumably, obviously, filmmaking comes naturally to you, presenting seems to come naturally to you, but has there been anything where you thought, yeah, this is a limitation I probably need to work on a bit more before I sort of, go public with it?
I mean, the presenting side of things, I still massively think I have so much to improve on, and I dig for feedback at every single thing I do. I'm asking people that I think can give me good feedback on how to improve. They must get so fed up with me because I'm constantly asking, I don't think this is quite right. How could I improve? How could I improve? And some of the best advice I got actually was this season was from one of the guys that heads up the Formula E TV broadcast side of things. And I asked him, I said, well, how can I improve? Because I really want to keep doing this. And he said, don't try and be a presenter. And he said, you're fitting a really good category because of who you are and being passionate about the sport. And yet we can trust you to say a line, or we can trust you to sort of be able to go off on a slight tangent within a live broadcast or talk to a driver. But don't try and pigeon yourself into what already exists, because if you do have a niche, then run with it, and don't be afraid to run with it, if that makes sense.
Just following on from that, actually, this raises a good question. There's a lot of talk within motorsport media and other sports of a new wave of, be it broadcasters, content creators, whatever, injecting some new life into how motorsports are portrayed across media, and also how they reach out to fan bases. In what ways would you say that you feel that you've contributed to that, or other people have told you that you can be part of this new wave and help lead? In terms of Formula E, you can be at the front line of a new rise of younger and more, could say, socially aware, and more tapped into social media, online, really getting the most out of the format of broadcasting.
I mean, I would absolutely love to sit here now and say that someone has come up to me and said you could be the part of the future of whatever, of a Formula E broadcasting or the social side of it. But in all honesty, that conversation hasn't happened. It hasn't really been how it's worked. It is true that the industry, not just in motorsport, but in football, in lots of other sports, and even outside of sport, is all going one direction purely because of how people in consume content now. I think we could all agree now that we watch way more on our phones or on our laptops or our tablets than we do on our TV. So that first of all is a massive switch. So it's about making that content work. And suddenly, if you're watching something on your phone, you're going to be watching something that's maybe 15, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You're not watching an hour and a half documentary. You're not watching a half an hour TV show that you get on your phone. So it's about adapting that content. And it was those sort of perhaps ideas that I'd come accustomed to within my production role of having to make content work for digital and doing that specifically, that when I brought that stuff up, it was like, oh, actually, yeah, this makes a bit of sense. Maybe we should get Saunders to help with this side of things, or he knows that world perhaps better than we do. So let's kind of allow him to be involved in it. And I think that was how I got my first, I guess, opportunity to get involved with the TV broadcast, which was interesting because it was a TV broadcast of the shakedown and the qualifying shows. But I was brought in as someone who could bring the social media audience into the show by talking about what they'd been saying in comments or how they'd been reacting to polls on Instagram and things like that. So it was, I think, bringing the idea of exactly what you just said there about where the world is going and how the sphere is turning, and them knowing that they had to sort of be getting more involved in that side of things, or be looking to, and me being a person who could help them with that.
It's really interesting what you said there about people liking shorter bursts or liking to watch shorter bursts, because on the other hand, something really traditional like David Attenborough, Blue Planet, is still very popular with young people, and I would say documentaries are probably best in the cinema these days. You get 2-3 hour documentaries about things getting cinema or Netflix releases and seemingly finding an audience. So is it just the case that there is certain content that's better long form, but the content that you like to make is not?
I mean, speaking personally for me, I've massively aligned myself as a consumer with the longer form content. I would much rather not watch anything on my phone. The argument of having to make content that is vertical, in the sense that it works as on an Instagram or a Facebook platform on your phone, and opposed to having it as a traditional 16:9 format, beautiful wide imagery. I align myself with that way more than I do the actual stuff I make personally. But I also just have to be aware that that's just how content is consumed now by the younger audiences. This is a stat that gets thrown around a lot, and it's completely true. And it kind of pains me to say it's true, but you have to be aware of it and kind of move with the times. But out of all content on Instagram at the moment, more than 70% of people watching it aren't watching it with sound. So that shows you how far it's come, to the point where people don't feel like they have the time engaging in content in that way or consuming it that way to even click the screen to have sound with it.
In fact, one of the most embarrassing things about Instagram for me is when I'm, quietly at my desk watching a story video, and then I press like, and it's not like, it's actually pressing the sound on. So yes, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I mean, I wish there was a bit more patience with the audience of kind of the digital audience, because it seems like you constantly having to adapt for a shorter and shorter attention span. And I think that really has an impact on how you can tell stories. I think you have to get to the point a lot quicker. You don't really get much chance to build narratives or build characters or emotion, and it's tricky. It's tricky to keep up to date with it. But in a sport like Formula E that needs to put itself at the forefront of growing media platforms and kind of get to those audiences that aren't maybe necessarily traditional motorsport fans, but could really get on board with something like Formula E, you've got to go to where they are, and that's what it is.
Yeah, and of course the other show they made to try and reach out to those audiences was Voltage. Now, people have different opinions about Voltage. I would say the concept was not wrong, but maybe the guests that they got on, could have been more motorsport related. But I mean, it wasn't wrong at the end of the day to go for a big audience. What do you think they could have done better about Voltage to make it work?
I mean, the concept of the show is really great, and they had all the right people involved, I think, to make it work. And it was very different for me because I was never really involved in any of the studio stuff. So it's hard for me to comment on how that unfolded, because for me, I was just the person who was, at the races, at the track, who would just kind of do, 3 or 4 links per show. So, and obviously that was difficult enough with tech issues, because you're imagining you're trying to get a live conversation between a studio in London and the side of a track in Mexico with as little delay as possible, with a lot of crowd cheering and a lot of cars going past. It's very, very hard to make that work, and that's something I learned quite quickly. But from my point of view, I think that they maybe revisiting who the guests were and maybe aligning them, which they definitely did towards the last few shows, with people that were a bit more from the motorsport world, or at least the car world, just to sort of bridge the gap of these guys are big on YouTube, or these guys have a big following of people that engage with stuff on YouTube, but they've also got interesting cars. So you're not just relying on them to be a fan of a person. You're kind of knowing that they're going to like the topic as well.
Yeah. Conrad, I mean, obviously we've talked about appealing to young people, and you're a lot closer to that target audience than I am. What do you make generally of Formula E's coverage last season, and how would you like to see them, continue to work on things next season?
In season 5, it's been wonderful, and prior seasons as well. The level of engagement has been on another level to what I can expect reasonably from other motorsports. Well, that's the thing that Formula E's done, is that pre-2017, when Liberty Media got hold of Formula One, or recent times in other sports, in media culture amongst those, is that it was kind of expected that there was limited contact, that the fans, if you wanted that true feeling of being engaged and being noticed, that you had to go there and get up and close with the drivers, get up and close with team members. And Formula E from the outset has been able to bring a lot of that passion straight to the fans wherever they be across the world. Not just because they're trying new and different territories for where they're holding the E-Prix. It's also, even with things like Fan Boost, giving people something to vote for, whether it's had dubious incidents in the past or not, in regards to who exactly is voting in them and what impact it's having. But the fact that people can actually feel like they're impacting a race, rather than just having to, feel resorted to taking the flags and going to a race themselves to feel like they're spurring on a driver, and tapping into so much content. It's made the drivers so likeable in times have passed where they were almost written off by a majority of fans who, when you're caught up in the culture of, say, Formula One, IndyCar, it could be quite easy to forget who's left and, who's outside of that elite circle. So for Formula E to be able to bring them back to our attention and make the whole cast of people involved within the sport so likeable and so it's so easy to find out more and more things about them through the media that's created for us. I think that's quite remarkable for a brand new series, and it's really endeared itself to fans, and it's especially paying off now.
I would agree. To contrast things, I was watching a DTM race the other day, and I might have tweeted a few salty things about how I just couldn't get into DTM racing. I believe me, I've tried. I like everybody else. My attention span has shortened, but like I used to sit on a Sunday and watch DTM on Motors TV when I lived in England, and it was great. But I just thought it's great that it's for free, but I'm not getting into this. Why? And I looked at it and I thought, well, hang on, Formula E, they have such fantastic ways of getting you into the drivers' heads and getting you to know the drivers in, quite special ways, and they take you, really down the pit lane and the paddock, and they get you to know about some of the technical aspects. But if there's a stoppage in the race, they don't stop talking about race control and the debates. And I just realised DTM is a very superficial level of coverage compared to that. And there's really, I still don't know what sort of a person Rene Rast is, or Nico Muller, who thankfully is coming to Formula E next season. But I wonder if actually that personality factor is part of the reason why we like Formula E so much. Would you agree, Saunders?
I think it plays a huge part for sure, and that's something within the content side of Formula E that they really try and, as Conrad was just saying, capitalise on it and really push it, because it means so much more when a race is good to have a bit of context of who the people are that are doing these crazy things, or when something kind of dramatic happens in a race, why it's so important, and that it's happened, or what impact does it have on the championship. And it's sort of making those little bite-sized bits of content that explain, this is how Jev dominated this race, or this is why it's so important that he needs to get points in qualifying, or this blah blah blah. So yeah, I think it's played a huge part in how engaged audiences can be, and especially, like, keep saying it, but that new audiences, because that is one of the best things about Formula E, is you don't have to be a motorsport fan to watch it and like it. You just have to. It's entertaining from so many different ways.
And it's almost like a soap opera on wheels, isn't it?
Yeah. So I always find it funny when people say the soap opera thing, but it's true, because there are elements that have that kind of like over like dramatization of things, and it's it's good. I absolutely love it, and I've completely bought into it. As a motorsport, as a concept. And I think maybe this is a good opportunity for me to say, and I'm sure you guys both agree, there's one thing that really, really riles me up, is when people try and make out like things like Formula 1 and Formula E can't coexist. There's the level of similarity with them, in my opinion, is so difficult to compare, to even begin to stop fighting against each other. And I'm sure we've all seen the comments of videos and comments on Instagram and YouTube and things like that. To even begin to try and compare them, I think, is such a foolish trait, because both of them can coexist in a world where you can get yes, we can make the argument that Formula E has given us a lot more competition in season 5 than Formula 1 has in recent years. That doesn't mean you can't go and watch Formula 1 and be absolutely gobsmacked about how fast they're going, or how close they're getting, driving at crazy speeds around circuits that have immense history. The two can coexist, and they don't have to be compared with each other constantly. And I think the sooner people realise that, the sooner they can just enjoy watching both.
This also leads on to another topic, is that when Formula 1, and it is inevitable, it will eventually do this, it'll come to a point where they adopt fully electric powertrains. Even then, the two series can coexist, because you look at the formats of Formula E and Formula 1, they're so different. Even if Formula 1 goes with a radical shake-up, and they're looking to do so right now, with starting off with a change in qualifying, potentially moving to a Formula 2, Formula 3 setup, that's still radically different to what we have in Formula E. That's a span of 3 days. Formula E is a span of 1. We would have 2 races rather than 1 E-Prix. And then you think of the format of the races themselves. Formula E takes part on street circuits in multiple different locations to where Formula One may go. It tries to tap in more to, you could say, a public audience, aren't too far away. It's on their streets, whereas in Formula One, there's a lot of purpose-built tracks. That's what it does. I mean, we only really have Mexico City right now in Formula E. I can't see that massively changing soon. Maybe with the progression of the, when the Gen 3 cars eventually come around, we can see what happens then. But it's more likely that the DNA of street circuit racing will be very, very apparent in Formula E. And then there's things like attack mode and fan boost. I mean, fan boost is a bit long in the tooth. It'll inevitably go at some point, but I'm sure there will be something to replace it. Formula One doesn't really have these. We can call it DRS. In fact, I wouldn't even agree on that, because a lot of things that people try to point out is that DRS is a gimmick in Formula One and that they don't particularly like it. It acts as a necessity right now. And they try and judge Formula E's fan boost and attack mode as the same, and try to deride Formula E as a series full of gimmicks, but it works. It's not particularly a gimmick when attack mode is so integral to the Gen 2 cars and the way that these E-Pre work right now. Mm-hmm. And it's been added so masterfully in a way that DRS has never been taken to the heart of Formula One fans. Anything near Formula E fans have taken to attack mode, for instance. The format just feels so different. It feels like it can definitely coexist alongside Formula One, and that they can both be incredibly entertaining.
That's a world that I think is going to be really interesting to see when it gets to that point, because as we know, Formula One every year, I don't know the complete number, but struggles with sponsorship and certain avenues, because people don't want to put themselves behind something that isn't green, isn't has good environmental credentials. So a lot of these manufacturers and sponsorships are coming over to Formula E because it's so future-proof, and it's such a good way for them to showcase their involvement in the more sustainable side of the world, or more environmentally conscious motorsport. So the curious thing for me is, what will come first? Will it come to the point where a country or a city where Formula One will host a race say, you know what, we really can't have this carbon emissions on our thing because we're behind and we've got a target to hit that's UN standards or EU standards, whatever, or climate accord standards, and we can't afford to be spending the money on this and it add to our carbon emissions. So I'm sorry, you can't race here this year, etc. Or we're not buying the rights for the race here this year, etc. Or will it come to the point where the technology is just so good that Formula One go, you know what, we have to have batteries now, or we have to have hydrogen, or we have to have whatever, because they're outpacing us, or it's more exciting, it's in creating a different technological advantage or to the sport. But it's just about what comes first. And then obviously I think I would assume, I'm pretty sure it's the case that Formula E have a patent on single-seater electric racing. So if that does come before the end of that patent, then Formula One have got a problem on their hands.
Yeah, I'm somewhere between your two points of view. I do agree that Formula One has a bit of a battle for relevance right now, because the idea of an ICE car, an internal combustion engine car that goes very fast, is something that people still hold close to their hearts. I mean, I still love listening to a Ferrari at full chat, for example.
Absolutely.
But we're talking about bijou models to increasingly, to diminishing numbers of people who have increasing amounts of money to spend. So, like much of McLaren's range, road car range, is built around selling to billionaires in Abu Dhabi, for example, or Qatar. People who can afford several of them at once and probably have a massive collection, and maybe don't necessarily take them out every weekend for a hoon. So this is a different crowd to the sorts of people who would maybe go off and buy road cars on the back of seeing Formula One in the past. And I wonder how relevant Formula One is to your average Honda Jazz buyer or your average Hyundai i20 buyer. I think the road relevance went a long time ago, which makes you wonder how it's going to cope in the future. The other thing is, yes, Formula E at the moment is city street circuits, and As the cars naturally get faster and can do longer race distances on the same batteries, or on newer battery technology rather, and when fast charging pit stops that take 30 seconds become a reality, are we potentially going to look at Formula E and Formula One merging to become a sort of a joint pinnacle of motorsport, or am I completely talking pie in the sky here?
My opinion of it is that Formula E has a very strong identity for a direction that it's going in terms of the trajectory of being this sort of very socially friendly, open to new audiences, kind of almost video game attributes towards it, combined with the sheer just enjoyment of pure motorsport. So as we've seen in the last few seasons, the number of manufacturers are only getting bigger. And people want to get involved. There's already, as far as I'm aware, there's already almost like a waiting list or an interest list of manufacturers who want to get involved in Formula E in future years. So the more teams you add, the more cars you add, suddenly these street circuits aren't going to be fit for purpose. There's already arguments for example, in Bern last year, that first corner was way too small for purpose. It was way too tight. It should never have been designed that way, because we learned what happened in the start of that race. That 22 cars going through that first corner was going to be a miracle, and it didn't happen. So I think we're at that point already. Are these circuits going to be future-proof? How easy is it going to be to still be using these really central street circuits, but needing them to be longer and wider to showcase the technology and how it's improved and how the speeds can be greater, and also have it as a travelling circus like it is, how the infrastructure works with that, because the faster you go, the more risk there is in crashes, the different sort of walls you need, the different sort of safety structures you need around the track. So the question is so big, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it happens, because the technology is moving really, really fast. And I definitely feel for the logistics sides of both sports, constantly having to adapt to that challenge.
Talking of logistics, the calendar for Formula E, what do you make of Jakarta?
I think it makes sense from a logistic point of view, because at least you're not going Europe, one country in Asia, back to Europe. You're taking advantage of already being over in that way in Asia for the setup side of things. And as we know, the setup for these races are happening almost while the previous races are going on in some instances. So that's massively, I think, more sensible in that sense, and going to have less of a footprint, hopefully, as well, rather than just kind of going across for Seoul and then coming back for London or New York. Was that answer your question, or have I missed a bit?
Yeah, it does. I'm also interested. Have you been to Jakarta before?
No, I haven't actually been to Indonesia at all. Not even to Bali, which is the hotspot for all travel creators, it seems. But no, I'm very interested in the location, because I follow quite heavily the sort of transformation that city has gone on in the last sort of 20-30 years, and to the point now where it's really at a critical point where they're looking at moving the entire city to Borneo, essentially the part of Borneo that Indonesia own, to show, just because it's got so bad with pollution and overpopulation, and it's essentially sinking as well. So it's I think it's more important than ever to be bringing light on things like that, and that's 100% something that Formula E being involved in, and Indonesia having that chat there is maybe why they're looking at doing it, as drawing awareness to these problems and connecting it with the world of Formula E. And maybe this is a good chance for me to say something which I don't think people give enough credit to. The guys at the top of Formula E. It's really easy to think that they're just looking for the best way to make money out of Formula E quickly, but I can tell you firsthand from conversations, these guys really do care about the environment. They really are looking to make things work. And it seems like there's points where you think, oh, definitely not. They've done this in the best way that they can, or the cheapest way they can, or the way to make the most from it. But there's a hell of a lot of corners that they haven't cut that's cost them a lot more money just for to be able to keep hold of those credentials. And I think it's important people know that.
Yeah, I think that's well. I mean, it's absolutely. I believe you anyway. I'm sure it's absolutely true. I feel that it's a nice problem to have, that there are so many cities that want races that some people have to miss out, because there was a time, and people have written about this, when Formula E had to be saved from oblivion after season 1, and the fact that we've got to this stage now is brilliant. But did you enjoy going to Marrakesh, Saunders? Do you have any travel anecdotes from there?
Absolutely. Marrakesh for the last 2 seasons has been one of my favourite races of the season, and I think for me, before I get onto the actual place, the circuit is great, and I, as much as I absolutely love the street circuits are a huge part and a fundamental part of Formula E. When you get those times like Mexico and Marrakesh, where you go to an existing circuit, I think it gives you a kind of sense that where it connects Formula E back to the wider motorsport world again, because of the similarity suddenly coming into play, that you're racing on a consistent surface. It's not going asphalt tarmac, it's staying the same. It gives you that sort of racing feeling and moments that you're used to with other motorsports. And I think that's important to have those in the calendar to bring across those audiences who are coming from other sports. And it always produced great racing. Like, I remember there was in season 4 we had a great race with Felix Rosenqvist, and then obviously last year was a complete mayhem with the BMWs, and the best win celebration I think I've ever heard with Jerome D'Ambrosio, who was so happy. He was like a 10-year-old on Christmas Day, and he just got every present he could ever want. He was so happy, and it was great to see. But yeah, that was that. I don't think, in terms of the place, it's such a bonkers place. It really is, and that's the sort of travel that I love, where you can feel completely out of your comfort zone, and you kind of you get forced to adapt to the way things are done locally. Because if you don't, then you're going to probably end up being shafted from a lot of money, or spending a lot more on something than you should be doing, or something like that. But no, I've got very fond memories of Marrakesh, and
Do you miss being able to go anywhere you want with with your significant others and film travel docs, or because obviously for the last 12 months or so you've been tied up with motorsport broadcasting. Do you wish you had more time to go and do the stuff you were doing independently on YouTube before?
This season more so than season 4, because during season 4 I was still doing a lot of stuff. So I was kind of coming back from one race, like not even leaving the airport, going to another terminal and flying out to film a documentary in South America, and then coming back, doing another Formula E race, not leaving the airport for when we're coming back from then, and then going over to South Africa to shoot something else. So it was like about, I think it was between February and June, I'd been in the UK for less than 10 days. I was just constantly going back and forth to different places, filming different things. This season, thankfully, wasn't as crazy as that. But yeah, I do miss that style of content making. But I think I perhaps maybe have matured a little bit in what I like to make, and what I like to be a part of, and what I've got to do this season with Formula E in terms of really taking the presenting stuff by the horns and trying to develop that. I've really enjoyed, so I can't say I'd change anything at all.
Like, I know that you really want to get into making your own content. Is travel YouTube something that would interest you in the future?
Potentially. I'm still not entirely sold on whether it's my forte or not. I definitely feel like I've got a future in writing career. That's been something that I've been not wanting to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet or anything, but I've at least known that I've got something about me when it comes to that. Whereas with YouTube, it's thinking about whether you've got the knack for the right words at the right time when you're actually in front of a camera, instead of being able to be behind a screen, knowing that you can type at any pace you want to, whereas you've got to be free-flowing when you're actually speaking into a microphone or showing yourself on a camera. And also making sure that I sound right, that I'm engaging, that there's a lot of boxes that I don't need to tick when I'm writing, but I do need to tick when I'm trying to get far on making videos.
I think one thing that's what's really great about the writing aspect as well is that you'll have the ability to still remain yourself and write in your own style. Where when YouTube takes over a little bit and becomes your life, you're constantly having to kind of follow trends or kind of be in touch with where things are going, because if you don't, you will just be left behind. And if you don't do it in a certain way, then your numbers will drop. And then with drop numbers, you have less sponsorship, or with drop numbers, less viewership, etc. So it's all like a constant game you have to play in, which is one of the reasons why I don't miss making content on my own YouTube as much, is because I never enjoyed that aspect of it. Or at least you get to keep your own voice with writing.
Yeah, one of the main things for me is that with my writing career, I can't be judged based on my voice. I can't be judged based on my looks. I can't be judged based on, like, when you're writing, it is just the writing, and you convey yourself through your words, whereas you convey yourself through a lot more things that are out of your control when you're doing radio or even content creating on social media. And quite honestly, I don't think that's my forte. I might change my mind in future, but yeah. Which is also why I have sorry to interrupt. Yeah, it's
no, go ahead.
It's why I have so much respect for content creators that are already out there in multiple different motorsports, putting themselves on the front line and willing to improve day after day when they're in front of the screens or behind a microphone, and just keep churning out content to such a wonderful standard. I think it goes highly underappreciated.
It's something I've been juggling with myself, really, or wrestling with the idea that these days we don't talk about bloggers, we talk about content creators, and it's almost become an expectation that somebody is, somebody comes up with the skill of, being able to write about a place like Ernest Hemingway, but also being able to present documentaries like Attenborough, and also being able to do radio like someone good on radio. I can't think of the name, but like. Does that really get to you after a while, Saunders? The fact that you're expected to be multifaceted and not have any weaknesses, and do you ever sometimes wish that you could just focus on maybe one thing rather than being a master of everything?
You have just done such an accurate description of my biggest career fear that is currently going through my my head at the moment. Is because I've been juggling a few different industries and a few different aspects of those industries over the last few years. When does it become the time to just focus on one? When does it become, what is that one? And I think there's definitely examples in my career so far where I've held myself back because I've wanted to keep two or three things going rather than putting everything into one. Yeah, maybe I'm greedy in that sense, because I really like the production side of stuff. I love directing content. I love shooting content, and then I also really enjoy being in front of the camera as well. So it's a battle, and it definitely can be tricky to deal with. But in terms of being fearful of weakness, one thing that I've always had is I would almost rather be criticised than praised. In a sense, of like someone says, what, that was good, but I think you can improve on this. I'd much rather hear that, because I'm with the in front of camera stuff. I'm still learning about it, and I have a bit of doubt in myself that if someone says, "Oh, that was really good," I just won't believe them, and I want them to tell me it was really good, but learn on this, but improve this. So that having that attitude towards it, I think maybe. Can be helpful as well as it can be stressful on other points. But yeah, it's a difficult industry, because even in the production side of stuff, away from any presenting, you are now required to know have a great knowledge of editing, shooting, Photoshop, After Effects, animation, motion graphics, and if you don't have that, then you will just fall behind. So it's very demanding, and I think there is still quite a clear divide between traditional presenter and digital presenter. But I think it will catch. I think that will become the same as well. I think there will be if you're a presenter, you need to have a social media following. We're only going to hire you if you can bring us an audience, especially I think when that's more relevant with digital stuff as well as TV. And that's why you're seeing people getting up. That's why you're seeing YouTubers getting TV shows on BBC iPlayer. It's why you're seeing those two industries come together in that sense. So yeah, I guess there is the pressure involved. Yeah, a very long-winded answer for you there, Stuart.
No, it's good. It's good. I like long-winded answers because this is a long-winded podcast. But I want to get a few travel stories from you because, like, obviously we follow the Formula E circus mostly from the living room in both of our cases. But I think we're both looking to expand in season 6. What races we go to and what we see for ourselves, but is it a uniquely frustrating experience travelling to Formula E races, or do you actually enjoy the challenge of like changing planes, of getting on a metro in a strange city, all that kind of stuff? And also, you know, are you the kind of person who just adapts naturally to foreign food? Are you the kind of person who likes something strange in their drink, that kind of thing?
Yeah, to be honest, I think from a quite young age, I've always almost felt more comfortable on the move than I have stationary. I've always felt more comfortable staying in different beds or staying in different hotels or immersed in different cultures than I have been just kind of in a routine, so to speak. So Formula E was a opportunity for me to do what I kind of already was doing in the side of traveling a lot and learning about different parts of the world and different sorts of cultures and different people, but getting to do it as a job that had the routine side to it as well. Because a race week is a race week, no matter where you are, it all follows the same formula. You're just eating different food, you're just seeing different sites, and there's different people around. But once you're on the circuit, everything is exactly the same. It follows like a very, very strict formula, which is nice because you know where you stand. I think you know when things are happening, and you know where to be, and helps you kind of make content because you've got an understanding of how things come together. But yeah, I absolutely love it. If I'm being honest with you guys, I absolutely love the Formula E job because it ticks so many boxes for me in terms of the getting to travel and try new things, try new foods, different cultures, and etc. And also be part of this really forward-thinking, rapidly growing motorsport that is so hugely entertaining.
Conrad, do you have any travel questions? Any questions on what it's like to be a travelling correspondent?
Yeah, I guess I've got a very vague question there. Like just exactly that. What's it like to be travelling so much within Formula E, and what are the plus points? What are the minus points?
The plus points are just getting to experience different places and kind of broaden your horizons and learn about the different ways that things happen around the world, which is something I've always really been interested in. I'm not going to pretend that there aren't minus points because there definitely are. There are negatives with going away, especially if you've got partners at home or family at home. It can be brutal being away for weeks and weeks and weeks of the year, sometimes week after week, especially because although the race is one day and the race format is one day, we're usually out there by the Wednesday and not flying back till the Monday or Tuesday in some cases. So every race really is almost a week away at a time from home, which has benefits because it means you get to see more of the places, even if it's just, where you're going for dinner in the night or getting to explore a little bit more. But it can take its toll on relationships and family at home. It's why you see all those memes when the Formula One calendar gets announced, and you see the people that work behind the camera, or you see like the people, the editors, or the guys in the broadcast, and they say, "Oh, I may as well file my divorce papers now," because they know how the toll it takes.
Yeah, I saw the personal trainer for the McLaren team doing that when he saw it was 22 races. 22 races is just barbaric for anyone who works for Formula One, isn't it?
It's so demanding. And yeah, I think even if you are the sort of person that adores traveling and adores that side of the sport, I think even at that point you're going to get fed up. I think you're towards the end of the season you're going to just be begging for it to be over.
So which venue in Formula E are you most looking forward to either going to for the first time or returning to next season?
Going to for the first time, I'm immensely excited about Seoul because I've never been to South Korea, and I love Asia in general. So, and what I've heard about Seoul, it's got this real edge, and I'm super keen to go out there and see what that's about. Always like returning to South America. Just love the vibe in South America. It's kind of super passionate, very quick, very ecstatic, but all at the same time, the people are lovely, and I don't know. It's just something about South America that I really like, and the races are always pretty good there as well. Like Mexico's a great venue for racing. Santiago, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure about the circuit layout next year if it's following the same as this season, but the last season. But yeah, those are the two for me. I think I'm most looking forward to, and of course London. Even though it's hometown, London. I think London's going to be fantastic. I was lucky enough to go to an event a few months ago with Oliver Rowland, where the two of us kind of got showed around what the circuit would look like based on how it is now before it's built. And one of the managers at the Excel Centre showed us around, and it's going to be immense. The space, the indoor part of that circuit is going to be so cool.
I saw a bit of Autosport's video around the XL, and it looks as though there's some quite challenging slopes where you need to be careful with to save regen before that, and also some fairly steep hills, and that indoor start finish line looks like it will be immense as well. And obviously the noise in there from 22 electric power units all at once. If you're in the grandstand, that's going to be great, isn't it?
That the inside bit especially is going to be great because they're fitting in loads of grandstands. They're really trying to capitalize on how many people they can get in there. They've got a really interesting way actually of how they're going to build the grandstands to allow for more space, and also more view. So once you're in the seats, you're not just seeing the direct 20 meters in front of you. You're getting the chance to see that entire length of the indoor bit, which on a circuit guide looks quite small, but when you get there in person, it's absolutely huge. I don't know if you've ever been to the Excel Centre for a convention so the inside of it sort of takes the standard layout of a convention centre. But usually when you go in there, that side of a hall, you might have 4 conventions on in one go because the place is huge. So you might have 4 events going on at the same time, all split with these big walls. But then when you take those walls out, which is something that I'd never seen, getting to see how big just that one whole side open space is absolutely huge. And it's going to be great to see how they transform that into the start grid, grandstands, and I think even in part of the E-Village is going to be in there as well.
Well, it's going to be fantastic, and I've got to say, although I'm hoping to go to all the European races next season, and I've got my fingers crossed for Adria, London's the one that I'm really hyped about because I don't live in England anymore, and I go back there generally to Shropshire to see my family at Christmas, and going to a home race when I don't live at home, and just feeling the atmosphere and feeling the sense of nostalgia, and getting all het up about something in England, it's going to be great,
Definitely, I think I'm very excited about London races.
Yeah. I said 22 electric power units. Of course, there's going to be 24 next season because we've got Porsche, which is great. But I want to ask both of you about some Formula E developments over the last couple of weeks, because BMW have announced Maxi Gunter, who I think he's still 21. He was the youngest driver on last season's grid, and to many people the most exciting. That's obviously a big move, but how do you both see him doing next season? And also, Antonio Felix da Costa, they finally announced him at DS Techeetah. I think this could go one of two ways myself. It could either be the best thing he's done in his career, and he could show that he's able to race toe-to-toe with the very best, i.e. Jev. Or if Jev continues to beat him like he beat Andre, then it could be a retrograde step from being a clear number one in a factory team, like he was at BMW Andretti. I mean, Conrad, what's your opinion on Maxi and on Antonio? Will their moves work out, do you think?
I think they're both brilliant moves. With Maxi's out of Dragon, I won't go too deep into that, but considering they were the team that gave him the chance to break through in Formula E, it's a good thing that he's got out of that team environment. It's been too chaotic and he's not been assured whether he'd even be racing there full time. There was obviously the seat swap with Felipe Nasr, which, although it's no fault of Felipe's, when you're given the opportunity, you take it. It was very unfair on Maxi. Whereas with BMW, he gets the chance to lead the team. Alexander Sims might take that number one role. We'll have to see how that one plays out. But Maxi has a good chance. He's the young gun, and if he can get on the level of Alex Sims, who already has more races behind him, marginally more, who knows? He could stake a claim similar to, say, Charles Leclerc has been able to do in the past year in Formula One. It could be a similar kind of dynamic. Antonio, on the other hand, it's now or never. I feel if he wants a title, and I think he's going to relish the opportunity to be in the same team as Jean-Eric Vergne, the guy who has won the last 2 titles and has made Formula E history by being not only the first man to win 2 titles, but to win 2 titles in a row. I think Antonio will relish the chance to be able to take that away from him in his own team. And if the cheetah can keep that dynamic going, and it shouldn't be too hard, because unlike some dynamics that we've seen in Formula One where they bubbled over, we can think of McLaren in the past. I can't think of any viable driver partnership in Formula E where that had ever happened. I think the cheetah can perfectly control it. So with a driver lineup that what they have, even if the car isn't marginally better than any others, those drivers alone could put them in solid footing for a second team's title in a row.
Saunders, your view on Maxi Gunter and Antonio Felix da Costa?
I'm going to have to agree. I think they're both great moves. Gunter showed great promise in last season, and the guy's such a good lad. He's really switched on. He's so dedicated to making getting his career as far as he can. And I think it's a really smart move for him to go across to a really stable structure like BMW. Give him some vital experience, not just racing, but also being part of a huge manufacturer team like that. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on, and I think he's made a good move, and I wish him the best, because I think I think he could impress us. I think we could get some surprise results from little Maxi Gunter next season. As for Antonio, agree. I think it was a good move for him. We have to remember that Antonio has been in an underperforming car all the way up to the start of last season, and he still managed to get results out of it that were probably beyond the car's capabilities, all the way from the Gurin all through to the Andretti's. Now, yes, he won't be the number one driver. I think that it's going to be the Jean-Eric Vergne show, but I think if I was Antonio, knowing how the seasons of Formula E had played out for him, this is now a chance to take the pressure of a big manufacturer off, be in a performing car, and also there's so many aspects away from the driving elements of being with BMW that I've had conversations with him where he said he's shown frustrations with all the extra commitments that come with a big brand like BMW, and I don't think he'll have that much pressure or have as many commitments with Diaz Techeetah. So I think that side of his life's going to get a lot easier, and I think an easier life for a driver and a happier life for a driver equals a better driver. A sort of mini documentary with Antonio about it was for Formula E, but it was about him being in WEC. It was one of the off the grid documentaries that came out on the YouTube channel last season, and he had frustrations at that team with the development of that car being quite behind the other teams within their category. So I think he'll be thankful to not have as many politics of the big manufacturer that come with racing in different series. And I think now he's got the opportunity to really sort of have a go at Formula E in a new way that maybe has been different to what he's had the opportunity to before, and still get to do the WEC as well.
Are those off the grid documentaries coming back? Because I loved the one with Lotterer and his photography.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think we'd definitely love to make more, but it's up to Formula E whether they want to do that. But yeah, they were great. They were great fun to make. Yeah, we would be keen to do more if the opportunity comes up. But yeah, I guess that's up to Formula E.
Sure. Okay, good. Well, I just want to finish with a question from one of my Patreon patrons, because one of the bonuses that I offer for people who donate on Patreon is the chance to decide the topics on the podcast. So, Steph Schrader, thank you for this. She wants to know what's the panel's opinion, and I'll start with Conrad on this one, on the rivalry already between Tesla and Porsche with the Taycan, because, of course, the story came out in the past week that Elon Musk, well, he didn't, but he said he was booking the Nordschleife to try and get the record off Porsche, and there are already Tesla fanboys on YouTube claiming that the powertrain in the upcoming new Model S will blow the Taycan out of the water before it's even been given to customers. Conrad, is this all more hot air from Tesla, or can we expect that the new Model S will indeed blow it away?
It's honestly quite tiring, is the debate between Tesla and Porsche that's grown over the past couple of months, if not more. I mentioned in an earlier podcast that we did that Tesla was taking on the role of automotive Apple in their branding. And if there's one thing to be known about Apple, is that they coexist in a large two-horse race with Google and Android, let's say in the smartphone market. And they need Android to play off, to be Apple, to be as strong as they are. And I feel that's why Elon Musk is so eager to stoke the fires. Like when he tweeted out criticising the usage of the turbo name on the Taycan and said, I don't think this word means what you think it means, which gained a lot of traction. I feel like he knows that...
I could agree with him in that. I can agree with him on the turbo designation because there's no need for it in an electric car. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
He's not necessarily wrong, but he's also not necessarily done that because he's just eager to point out something that's irritating him. I think there'll be an important reason behind this, because he already knows he's created the automotive Apple. He just needs the automotive Android in Google to be able to play off and to be able to stoke the fire. Oh, sorry. I mean, when I said Google, I must have set off my Google.
Oh, no.
That's really annoying.
That's happened to me so many times in the last few days. I went to a friend's house party and tried to mess around with his home speaker. Almost changed my phone to Japanese.
I just love the fact that three things, because I have my laptop out as well, so three things were like, oh, what do you want to say? What do you want me to do? But
it's good that somebody's listening, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah.
So Saunders, Porsche versus Tesla, is it tiresome for you?
I think it's gonna become tiresome because I think the arguments that are getting made are almost a little bit outdated at this, and they definitely come without the knowledge or the logical thinking about how each company operates in very different ways and what each company can get out of this sort of social spatting of each other. But yeah, I mean, I test drove a Tesla last week because I was just interested to see how they were, and as in, they are very impressive and they're very quick. But I think you're never gonna, until they can really establish themselves as a company that can mass produce multiple models for multiple markets, and have all of the infrastructure and security that you can get with a pre-existing manufacturer like Porsche. they don't really have the leg to stand on apart from whether their car is quicker or not. So yeah, in the argument of whether it will go around the Nordschleife quicker, it might do. It might do. It depends who's driving, I guess, and it depends on. I don't know whether that car is tuned as well to performance as a Porsche would be in terms of cornering, in terms of brake balance, and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens. I think that isn't the chat that Nico Rosberg offered himself up to do the drive in the Tesla.
I didn't hear that, but it's interesting news.
So Elon Musk put the tweet out about wanting to do it, and Nico replied and said, "I'll do it if you want." And Elon replied and said, "Sounds good," or something similar. So Elon, so Nico might be doing that for him. But I think there's the argument to which one you'd buy. I think, which is really what it comes down to, isn't it? Who are buying them, how many people are buying them, is going to depend on who wins that race. And it's kind of like what Conrad was touching on. It's the different brand identity. Like, even if the Google or a Samsung phone is better than an iPhone or anything Apple make, there's still going to be people that will always buy the Apple option. And Tesla is they're kind of securing themselves as that brand, as being the niche one to own, being the cool one to own. It's a status symbol. Whereas Porsche have that, of course, with the legacy of owning a Porsche, especially with such great history in motorsport and on the road. It's just going to take a difference of who wants to buy it and where they align themselves is what's important. And similar to the argument of comparing Formula E with other motorsports, this new wave of people getting on board with electric cars might align themselves more with a cool sort of disruptive brand like Tesla than they do the old hand of Porsche.
I think the cheering thing about electric vehicles is that so many innovations are now passing down the chain to relatively mainstream brands and products. For example, it's a bit like smartphones. I have a OnePlus phone. It's okay. It's got a very good camera, but it's also half the price of the latest iPhone. And I really appreciated how so much technology had passed down and, become good enough for most people. I think when I drove the Leaf, that was the thing that I got. It was that, so much that might have been in the Tesla only a few years ago, or in those top range cars only a few years ago, was now becoming commonplace and something that you could expect to shift mass units of. But how close do you think we are to a genuinely affordable, Renault Clio price EV that everyone wants?
Oh, we're close. We're really close. I'm in the market at the moment for an electric car. So I've been doing a hell of a lot of research on what's coming, what's available now, where people are hoping to be in the next few years. And I think we are close, mainly because the battery price is just dropping so significantly every year. It's dropping huge amounts, allowing the cost price to come down, and then that's getting passed on. I think the things to be excited about, I guess, coming out of Frankfurt especially, was the VW's approach, what Volkswagen are looking to do. The ID3 looks to start at under 30,000, and the top spec battery of that is, I think, over 320 miles. So that's already pushing into the Tesla Model 3 range, and coming in at a starting price of £10,000 less. So that's in a space of, once the ID3 is out, the space of a year in the UK. So I think we're getting really close to it being really affordable to get like a nice hot hatch that doesn't come with a ridiculous price tag, but still has the range.
So you don't think we're many years off, a £15,000 say EV that people would like to have?
No, not at all. I would say within the next 5 years, we'll have a decent number of manufacturers that are offering that exact thing.
Thank you for joining us on the eTalking podcast. In the next edition, you can catch up with Valencia testing, the first chance to see all of the Formula E teams together on the track. We'll find out who's on the pace, who's still got some catching up to do, and what the drivers and team principals hope for from the new season. So, look forward to that.